has been a while since I had submitted an event on here, so here we go. This is one about Annie. Annie was a little girl at about the age of 4 or 5, with curly blonde hair down to her shoulders. She also had on a white gown with a bonnet, and clear blue eyes. Her eyes were like tropical water, very clear, and very blue. Anyways, this event took place at my old school. If you didn't know, I'm able to hear, see, and talk to spirits from a very young age. Now back to the event. All this mostly took place in math class. Note, there are no windows and no AC in the room. The only window we had was the window on the door, and that was it. And the walls were concrete. One day we were in class, and I can see Annie standing right by the teacher that was up in the front of the classroom. As soon as Annie turned her head and saw me, she smiled and faded away. I wasn't scared or anything. I was already used to seeing spirits. A couple of days passed, and I haven't seen Annie. It wasn't until the following week when I saw her. She was standing next to me. I saw her in the corner of my eye, but I didn't want to turn my head and scare her away. And it was already the fact that she was sad. But this time, I wasn't the only one who saw her. My friends Diana and Renee saw her also. Diana is a very good friend of mine, and she can also see, hear, and speak to spirits. Renee, on the other hand, was only just getting used to seeing spirits, but Renee could only feel them and not see or hear them. At that time, I didn't know her name. We, as in Diana, Renee, and I, called her Girl before we knew her actual name. When we found out her name, it was kind of weird. It was the next day, and we were talking about Annie, and the name popped in my head. I don't know how it happened, it just did. As soon as I knew her name, I told my friends, and they asked how did I know her name. I had no explanation to this. I'll be posting more updates about Annie later. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this event. Feel free to comment. Last year, I was at my mom's cousin's house, cleaning with my cousin and my sister. My cousin and I were in the bathroom cleaning, but I had to go use the bathroom. There was a trash can under the counter, and as I walked by it, the lid of the trash can opened, but I knew it wasn't me because I didn't step on it. It would have been really hard for me to step on it if it's under the counter. That day, we heard other sounds. We would come up the stairs after we went down the stairs to clean her room, and when we came up the stairs, someone was stomping behind us. It wasn't either of us because we don't stomp when we run up the stairs. Then this other time, I was with my friend Lauren. We were outside jumping on a trampoline, and we kept looking out to the woods because we would see stuff. And we kept hearing twigs breaking, so we would look over there and see this face. It kind of reminds us of the girl from The Ring. We went to get closer to look, but it wasn't there when we got over there. We didn't know what was happening. This other time, my friends, Lauren, Jordan, Hannah, and I were playing with the Ouija board, and we lit candles around us. We called a spirit, and the eye would move, so we would ask questions. We got a little scared, and then the candle blew out. It was standing on the dresser, so it couldn't have been any of us. We ran out of the room. Then, when we went back into the room, these dolls that were normal before we left, we went back. Their heads were turned, and their feet were like moving forward, where it was going to fall, and we all made sure that no one was in there, so it couldn't have been any of us. At the end of 2008, my now ex-husband and I separated. For 2 weeks, I stayed in the income-based apartments of a friend and then moved into the same building that she lived in, on Dogwood Avenue in Palmer. The first day I spent in my new home, arranging my few belongings, it was deathly quiet. I contributed that to the fact that I was no longer living with my friend and was alone. I didn't even have my cats, as it was a no-pet complex. Except that out of the corner of my eye, I could see the flick of a tail and a glimpse of a paw or something trotting out of the room. I can even hear little kitty claws occasionally sticking in the carpet. After 2 weeks of no cats at my friend's apartment, I was curious as to why I would see them now. I contributed it to loneliness and left it there. The first night, however, was nerve-wracking. Since it was high summer, we had almost 24-hour daylight. So it wasn't like anyone could have just gotten in my apartment in the dark. I was, and still am, a paranoid freak about locking my doors. There weren't enough dark corners to hide in, and I had almost no furniture. It was an upstairs apartment, so by the time anyone could have climbed in and opened a window, they would have been spotted. Thusly, hearing the repetitive sound of my refrigerator opening and closing puzzled me. There was no mistaking the sound of magneted rubber seals around a door of a refrigerator. That sticky schlock sound as it opens, and the thump and rattle of the door closing, and its contents shaking. I couldn't figure it out. Why would somebody be in my apartment at 10:30 in the evening, going through my refrigerator? Surely, if they had meant to rob me or hurt me, they would have followed the noise I was making as I was getting ready to get into bed. But no. Whoever was in my apartment was trying to look at my refrigerator. I grabbed my handgun and marched out into my kitchen, determined to give a good scare to whoever was helping themselves to my food. Upon inspection of the kitchen and all of the closets, there was no one else in my apartment with me. I went back to bed, chalking up my experiences to exhaustion. For the next half an hour, I listened to the sound of my refrigerator opening and closing. I finally got back up and went to the kitchen and managed to catch the act in person. While my fridge door stayed closed, sealed shut, the sound of it being open and closed repeated itself once again. Having experienced other freakishly odd things in my parents' old house in Soapstone Road, I took a breath and went back to bed. The next night, the fridge continued on, with making its abnormal noise, and it was accompanied by the sound of someone walking around in my living room and down the hallway to my bedroom. No one ever came in. The footsteps stopped about 3 paces shy of my bedroom door. Again, no downstairs neighbor. She didn't start moving in until about a week after I did. As time went on, I accepted the fridge door and the footsteps. I had a harder time with the door opening on its own, not 2 minutes after I had closed them. The door to the water heater closet was in my bedroom. Due to the difficulties I often had in getting it to open, it would surprise me to wake up in the morning to find the door swinging wide open. My sliding closet doors, also somewhat stiff, would be open in the morning or when I came home from work. It got out of hand when I put keys in the basket of my entry table, get up for work in the morning, and find no keys at all. I would check everywhere. Finally, it would come to the point that I would have to say something. "Give me back my keys, please. They are mine and I need them. You gotta knock this off." I would go back to where I started looking and wouldn't find the keys in the basket. Instead, they would be swinging merrily on the hook above the basket. It didn't seem like whatever was there with me was trying to hurt me. If I was outright acknowledge them, the missing keys and open doors would stop for a while. I think whatever was there just wanted to remind someone that they were there, that they had an existence, and it deserved to be acknowledged. I transferred from my 3-bedroom duplex in Valdez, Alaska to a 3-bedroom apartment in Seward, Alaska, October 2010. Unbeknownst to me, I was moving into a place that something was already living in. He was a nuisance. I have hardwood floors and doors that are loud when opened and shut. In the middle of the night, I would hear him go from one room to another. He would wear heavy boots to make it sound so much more intense. It almost became a ritual for me to wake up after those noises, just to make sure my front door was locked and that there was no one in my house, scanning each room, finding nothing amiss. When doing so, I would sometimes smell his masculine scent drifting through the hallway. It almost became a daily thing for him to hide something of mine and return it minutes later. Like my hair sticks I used for my hair bun, I would go exactly to where I put it the night before and it would be gone. I would look for it furiously, walking around with my hand on my head, and I would finally ask my kid, "Hey, do you know where my hair stick is?" And majority of the time, she would go back where I looked the first time and she would find it. At home by myself, I would get negative feelings, like something was watching me, but I wouldn't see anything. I would get used to it and shrug it off. I was okay with it until he started messing with my food. I would be cooking lunch or dinner, and once I was done heating up something, I would turn the stove off and make sure that there was no more red light stating that the stove was on and go do something else. Then, a couple of minutes later, it would smell like something was burning. I would run to the stove, and sure enough, my meal would be toast. After that, I had my mother come over and bless the place for me. She would usually get about a teaspoon of olive oil and bless it. Then she would bless me and my daughter and put an oil cross on our foreheads and lay her hands on each of our heads and say a prayer. Then we would leave, and my mother would pray over our apartment. My mom does better on blessings of a place when there's no one there, so she could be as loud as she wants without frightening us. She would first open all the doors in the apartment and all the windows. She would take the oil and start at one end of the place to the other end and put a small oil cross on it and say, "In the name of Jesus, you are no longer able to use this as an entryway or an exit. Get out of this room." And she would use her whole body to shoo the invisible out with her arms and her hands. She would do it throughout the whole room, including the closets and any place she thought evil would hide. Leaving that room, she would bless the doorway and say something like, "You are no longer able to use this door as an entryway or an exit in the name of Jesus." And then she would go to the next room and do the same thing. And finally, when all the rooms were done, she would go to the main entryway and bless the last door. When I went home, it looked a lot brighter everywhere. I wouldn't get that weird feeling that someone was watching me. My food would no longer get burnt, and I don't wake up in the middle of the night to someone walking around my hallways, opening and closing doors. I'm not scared anymore if I accidentally leave my front door unlocked during the night. I have lived in Alaska all of my life. My family mainly lives in California. My cousin that I barely know died last night. I have always had weird feelings like I'm being watched or someone is always with me. I had gone to a shrink and did many tests because I thought I was going crazy. But to the medical world, I am 100% healthy. I have always believed in everything because why not believe in something that hasn't been disproven or proven? It seems that I have always known more about people than they let on. I have a special friend, as I call him, because whatever it is has been with me for many years, since I was 7 or 8. I don't feel like it's a good thing, whatever it is. I have always had sleepless nights. I am reaching out and talking about it because it's getting worse over the years. The first person that I have ever seen isn't with us anymore would be my uncle. My Uncle Johnny died when he was 18. He was my dad's twin brother. I had never met him. I was about 9 or 10. I was asleep. As always, parents check in on their children when they are sleeping. I had a white bunk bed, and I had always put the blankets around my bunk bed because I felt safer, I guess. That morning, I have no idea what time it was. I woke up, and all the blankets were gone. And there was a man staring out my window. He looked like my father, but not at the same time. I said, "Dad?" This person didn't look at him like he was used to being ignored. I guess my gut told me to get out of my room, so I ran out of my room and went into my dad's room and saw he was still sleeping. I have no idea how I did it, but I poked my head around the corner of my room, and the man was still standing there. And the name popped in my head. Johnny. I said his name out loud, and at that moment the person looked at me and smiled. Like a wow smile, I guess, and I felt safe. Then he was gone. The night my great-grandmother died at 3:36 a.m., I woke up because I heard a loud bang. And in a moment my great-grandma popped in my head, and it was her smiling, and then she was gone. The next day I found out that my great-grandmother had died, falling out of her bed from the side effects of her stroke and hit her head. The main experience was with my Uncle Paul. My Uncle Paul was like my other father. Me and him were very close. He had gotten really sick and was having repeated heart attacks in the hospital. I woke up at 4:46 a.m. having a panic attack, crying my eyes out and pleading with God not to take my uncle from me. I had fallen asleep from freaking out and had a dream. It was my uncle, and we were in his backyard in California. He loved his garden and his yard, and he was talking to me, telling me that he loved me very much, and everything would be okay. And that he will always be there for me. And said he will miss everyone. And his garden. And hugged me and was gone. I found out that my uncle had started his last heart attack at 4:44 a.m. and died at 4:48 a.m. I haven't seen him since that night in 2009. My special friend that has been with me since I was little isn't one of my family members. He messes with me at night. He will turn the computer off and on at night, hence the sleepless nights. I used to be scared of him, but have gotten used to him. He feels like a man's presence, so that's why I call him a he. He has saved my life a couple of times. My guardian angel, I guess. But there are nights that I feel complete anger or evil, and I can't decide between those two feelings. I have told my aunt, and I guess my family has a history of seeing people that aren't with us anymore. But she hasn't heard of anyone in our family having a special friend, as I call him. I have asked his name many times, but I feel that anger, and I'm silenced. I need to share this, I guess, to people that won't judge me and might give me advice about it. I might be crazy, I don't know, but I hold a job, and I don't take drugs or pills, and I'm in college. I'm at the point of not knowing what to do anymore. Do any of you guys live in Alaska? Seriously though, do any of you live in Alaska? I honestly want to move to Alaska. I don't know what it is. I really want to move to Alaska, man. Do any of you live there? Let me know how it is. What's it like freezing? I guess I can ask my Canadian viewers, my Canadian ghouls, because I hate the cold, but also I like the cold. You know what I mean? It's really weird. But I hope you guys like these stories. I really like researching these. These are actually really fun. And I hope you guys are enjoying this, 5 stories from each state series I'm doing, because I really like them. And it seems to be doing well. I got a decent amount of views on my last one. So yeah. And don't forget, guys, as always, my last video will be on the top left. My next video will be in the bottom left. All my social medias will be on this end slate. And also in the description below. And remember, there's always someone or something watching you.